American couple Louise and Ben Dalton and their preteen daughter, Agnes, are partying in Italy, but their vacation does not go as fun as they expected because of the worry of taking care of their daughter. At one point, Agnes loses her plushie, Hoppy, forcing a frustrated Ben to look for it. When he returns, he finds Louise and Agnes talking with another couple who found her plushie. They formally meet and befriend free-spirited British couple Patty and Ciara and their son Ant, who has some communication problems and social anxiety. Agnes is fascinated by Patty's Vespa and asks him to take her on a ride. Even though Patty is a reckless driver who doesn't even have a helmet, they are forced to allow her to ride with Patty due to Agnes's insistence. Once Patty returns with Agnes, he invites Ben and his family to lunch nearby. During lunch, Ben explained that he wanted to move to London with Louise and open up an office for his company in England. However, during the hiring procedure, an economic collapse happened, and Ben was let go, and his dream of opening a regional office was shattered. Because of this, Ben is effectively unemployed right now, forcing Louise to work, and she works in PR. But Ben has hopes that he'll pick himself up. To cheer him up, Patty explains that he used to be a doctor but was miserable during his practice until he quit. Now he works for Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, and his job allows him to travel. While they're eating, Ant and Agnes go to play together. Patty is relieved that Ant finally has a friend and explains further that Ant has a condition that left him with a smaller tongue and an inability to communicate. While the four are talking, a dreaded Danish couple who does not allow anyone else to talk arrives, but the charismatic Patty is able to send them away. The families become best of friends and even eat dinner together. They arrive in London, and Ben wishes Agnes good night in her room, and Agnes demands a separate room for Hoppy. Though he promises to think about it after Christmas, he expresses his frustration about Agnes's obsession with Louise and comments that they should be worried about it. Furthermore, Ben is frustrated because he didn't get a job again. When Louise's phone rings, she tells Ben that it is Agnes's math tutor and even offers to allow him to read the message if he doesn't believe her. But Ben takes her word for it. Louise also shows him a letter from Patty and Ciara inviting the Daltons to their remote farmhouse in the countryside. Ben thinks it's a good idea to go, hoping the change of scenery will be good for them since Louise and Ben are at odds over Ben's unemployment and Louise's infidelity, and Agnes, who has anxiety and is unhealthily attached to Hoppy. During the drive, when Ben becomes frustrated, thinking they've taken the wrong turn, Louise pleads to him not to be mad and eventually finds a landmark to guide them. Arriving at the farmhouse, Louise, Ben, and Agnes are warmly welcomed and are in awe at the luxury in which Patty and Ciara live. Ciara tells the family that when Patty heard they were arriving, he even butchered a goose. This shocks Ben and Louise, since the two mentioned that Louise is a vegetarian. Furthermore, Patty gives the first bite to Louise, even though Ben says that he will take it in her stead. But Patty is adamant that it should be Louise. Louise takes a bite to please their hosts, but later pulls it out of her mouth when Patty isn't looking. After dinner, when Ben goes to throw out trash, he notices Ant trying to tell him something, but cannot communicate. Patty suddenly appears and asks Ant to go back to bed. The couple sit in the living room to chat and smoke, and Louise hears Ant moaning from his room. Concerned that he's in pain, she offers to check on him, but Patty and Ciara say it is usual for Ant to do it before sleeping, and that he will eventually sleep, which he does. When Ben and Louise were about to go to bed, Ben told Louise that she should have spoken to Patty about the goose, but she said she didn't want to ruin the moment. She notices a small stain on the bed and complains about it, but Ben says such a stain may go unnoticed in the country. Louise finds it odd that a doctor lives in such a dirty place, but Ben replies that things are different in England than in America. While they're talking, Agnes, who has anxiety, arrives to sleep with her parents. The following morning, the families go out for a hike. During the hike, Agnes sits on a swing, but Ant stands absent-mindedly in front of her, not allowing her to use it. She calls Louise, who tries to communicate this to Ant, but he doesn't listen. Louise calls Patty, who, to everyone's shock, aggressively pushes Ant away and tells him to help Agnes enjoy the swing. Patty notices that Louise's neck is very stiff and takes the family to a nearby lake to cool their bodies with a cold swim. However, Louise is nervous about swimming, though Patty and Ciara try to push her into accompanying them. They notice that Ant cannot swim, but Patty refuses to help him. In private, Louise complains to Ben that she has grown unnerved by the unpleasant behavior of their hosts and wants to use her neck pain as an excuse to leave. But Ciara suddenly appears to invite the family to dinner at a friend's house, who is a good cook. The Daltons have no choice but to accept the invitation. As the Daltons prepare to leave, they They are further shocked when they meet a babysitter named Majid, with whom they will be leaving Ant and Agnes since the children are not invited to the dinner. Patty explains that Majid is a Syrian immigrant with poor English who cannot find a proper job due to his status as an immigrant. The Daltons reluctantly leave Agnes and Ant with Majid. More surprises await for the Daltons when Patty takes them in his car, driving recklessly. They finally arrive at Patty's friend's place and are introduced to Mike, a poacher and a chef who hunts the meat himself and sources all the ingredients in his food on his own. Louise takes this opportunity to mention that she's vegetarian. When Patty asked why she ate the goose last night, Louise said she did not want to spoil his hard work. Though Patty apologizes for forcing her to eat meat, he launches into a debate and challenges Louise's vegetarianism, calling it a privilege. Before the debate becomes heated, Ben concludes by saying that the matter is complicated. While playing hide-and-seek with Majid, Ant shows Agnes a collection of watches Patty has and a message written on one of them in a foreign language, but Agnes is unable to understand him. Meanwhile, at Mike's place, Patty tells the Daltons that his own parents made him miserable, and it was marrying Sierra that saved him, and the two have been married for 17 years. Patty further comments that he and Sierra have intercourse daily, but Ben and Louise do not find the time or opportunity anymore. Patty jokingly performs a sex act with Sierra, shocking their guests. As Patty and Sierra are dancing, Louise begins to wonder how old Sierra was when they met since they've been together for 17 years, and she's still quite young, but Ben tells her not to mention it. After dinner, when Mike offers them the bill, Ben offers to pitch in the money, but Patty gives him the whole bill to pay and gets his car. Meanwhile, Ant shows Agnes several wounds on his body, but instantly hides them when he hears that his parents have returned. A frustrated Patty discovers that Ant has been showing his watches to Agnes. In the Daltons' bedroom, Ben becomes furious at Louise for suggesting in front of Patty and Sierra that Ben rarely has intercourse with her. Though Louise insists she was joking, she also argues that it's been 6 months since they did it together. When Ben references a prior incident of Louise's infidelity, Louise replies that Ben was angry before he discovered her infidelity, and that he accuses the world around him of his own inadequacies. She mentions how she upended her entire life for Ben's sake, and even stayed with him after he lost his job. Once she lets out her outburst, the two decide to handle their issues maturely and apologize to one another while Patty watches from outside. At night, Louise wakes up to check on Agnes, only to find her and Ant missing from their room. She goes out to investigate, only to discover Agnes and Ant have been moved to share a bed with a drunken Patty and Sierra. Horrified, Louise picks her up, wakes Ben, and tells them they are leaving. At the crack of dawn, the family gets in their car, and Ant watches sadly from the window. During the drive, however, they discover that they've left Hoppy behind. They stop to look in their luggage, but the toy is not there. Ben decides to drive anyway and tells Agnes that they can ask Patty and Sierra to mail it to them or buy a new one. But Agnes's anxiety grows worse, and she tells them to go back to retrieve it, as the two will hurt it like they hurt Ant. She kicks the driving seat, almost causing Ben to collide with an approaching truck, and starts scratching her arms while her breath becomes constricted. The family is forced to return to look for it. Ben tells the family to stay behind while he looks for it, but Louise follows him. She finds Ben in an argument with Patty and Sierra, who question why they left without saying goodbye. Ben insists that he didn't want to wake them up. When asked why they are leaving, Ben tries to make up an excuse by claiming that Agnes has anxiety and likes to sleep with them, but their bed is small. Louise mentions the night's incident of them taking Agnes to their bed. Sierra apologizes for the mishap and mentions how her own daughter, Mary, died in the cot at a young age, which is why she took Agnes. Suddenly, Agnes appeared with Ant, who found Hoppy. Though Ant tries to speak to them, Patty answers on his behalf by saying that Ant is sad that they're leaving. The Daltons reluctantly decide to stay. While Ant and Agnes are playing, Ant passes a note to Agnes, but it is in a foreign language. When Sierra walks over to them, Ant eats the note to prevent her from seeing. Later, Agnes relates this incident to Louise and comments that it's not normal, but Louise attributes Ant's eccentric behavior to his mental illness. Patty takes Ben out to a hunt, but Ben cannot shoot an animal. Patty reveals that he heard Ben and Louise shouting at night. Ben argues that Louise wasn't entirely faithful, as he only caught her texting another man. To comfort him, Patty takes Ben to an empty field to scream his frustration out, or it will eat him from the inside. Later, while the family is preparing lunch, Louise accidentally cuts her finger, and Ben says that it's a good thing they have a doctor at home. This surprises Patty, who now claims that he's not actually a doctor and doesn't remember mentioning it. When they mention Italy, Patty says that he lied because he felt self-conscious. He doesn't actually work and gets by through selling marijuana. When Ben and Louise become worried, Patty and Sierra start laughing and claim that they are joking. During lunch, Louise becomes irritated at Sierra's controlling behavior towards Agnes and tells her not to tell her daughter what to do since she's not her parent. To cover her, Patty replies that Sierra grew up in a care house where everyone cared for each other without their parents and doesn't know about these social rules. Agnes and Aunt offer to show them a dance routine that they rehearsed together, but to the shock of Dalton's, Patty constantly keeps pausing the music and berates Aunt for his bad dance. He even goes so far as to forcefully move Aunt's feet in sync with the music, which unnerves Agnes, who refuses to dance anymore. Patty pleads to Ben to tell her to dance one more time. Ben reluctantly tells her to dance, but Patty throws a mug at Aunt. Horrified, the Daltons end the dance and ask Patty why he's doing this to his child. Patty retorts that now they are trying to parent his child. In private, Louise tells Ben that they should leave now and berates him for not standing up to Patty. Sierra pleads to Louise not to leave without having a justifiable excuse to pacify Patty. However, while Patty is asleep, Aunt steals a set of keys from him. He takes them and leads Agnes away from Sierra towards a locked shed. He opens the door using the keys and leads her further down into a basement. Inside is a collection of luggage and personal possessions belonging to various families. Using a photo book, Aunt reveals to Agnes that Patty and Sierra are not his real parents, but are serial killers who lure families to their farmhouse, rob and kill them before cutting out their children's tongues and using them to assist in luring their next victims. Aunt shows Agnes that this has happened to him and his family, and that Patty and Sierra intend to make the Daltons their next victims. She takes pictures with her phone and they leave. Aunt goes to return the keys to Patty, but finds him up already. When he tries to conceal the keys behind him, Patty suspiciously says, "Show me," but adds love, meaning a hug. Aunt asks Patty to carry him on his back and uses this excuse to return the keys. Later, Patty apologizes to the Daltons, claiming that he had drunk too much. Agnes fakes having her period and manages to get Louise alone to explain the situation through pictures on her phone. Patty becomes suspicious when he notices Aunt being enthusiastic and tries to sneak into the shed to see if Aunt has been there. Louise is horrified after seeing the images and calls Ben. Realizing that they cannot pretend everything is normal with Agnes so freaked out, they decide to tell Patty and Sierra that Agnes had her first period and use that as an excuse to escape. However, Patty and Sierra become suspicious, and the Daltons discover that their car tire has been damaged. Patty offers to fix it, and once the tire is fixed, the family is about to leave. But Patty asks Agnes if she has everything she needs and looks upwards to see Hoppy stuck on the roof. He comments on how Agnes cannot leave without it. He brings out a stepladder, but tells Ben to climb it as he has longer arms. As Ben climbs, Patty keeps shaking the ladder to shock him, but Ben eventually retrieves Hoppy, and they notice the toy is damaged. With everything done, Patty tells the Daltons to send him a text once they're in London and invite them to their home. Though Louise admits that she will, Patty replies that they are not being honest with them. Louise covers it up by agreeing that she wasn't being honest, as she will not invite Patty and Sierra because she believes she will separate from Ben because of the issues in their marriage. This convinces Patty, and the family can finally drive away. Ben and Louise promise to Agnes that they will eventually free Aunt. However, Patty throws Aunt, who can't swim, into a pond. Ben goes to rescue him and tells Louise to take the wheel and drive outside, but Patty closes the gate. Ben rescues Aunt before a gun-wielding Patty and Sierra capture them. They're forced to transfer their savings before being prepared to be killed. When Ben asks why they're doing this, Patty replies, "Because they let them." Just as they're about to sedate Agnes to cut her tongue, Louise attacks Patty with a box cutter, and a struggle ensues. Louise is able to take Sierra's gun, allowing the Daltons and Aunt to escape. Before Louise can leave, Sierra pleads to her not to leave her with Patty and lies that she's also a victim, but she locks the two in the house. They get into their car and try to escape, but Mike appears with his rifle and starts shooting. They lock themselves inside the house and try to call an emergency, but Mike frees Patty and Sierra, who cut off the phone connection. Louise tells Ben that they should move into the forest nearby, which is dark, but Ben becomes paranoid and starts rambling until Louise calms him down and reminds him that his family needs him. Suddenly, the power is cut out, and Ben comes to his senses as Patty threatens him from outside. They make a Molotov cocktail to light a nearby roof on fire to alert someone, But when they open the shutters, Mike starts shooting them. Louise fires the gun, allowing Ben to throw the cocktail, but it slips from the roof and falls on Patty's car. The Daltons hide the children in the closet and prepare to fight their assailants. Patty tries to provoke Ben into coming outside by referencing his cowardly nature and his wife's infidelity, but Ben doesn't answer. At the same time, Mike uses the stepladder to climb to the roof. Ben goes to the rooftop to confront him. Meanwhile, Patty manages to break in, and Ciara goes through another route. Mike breaks in through the attic, and Ben hides in the closet. Meanwhile, Patty tries to enter the room where Louise is hiding while she desperately holds onto the barricade. When he moves his arm inside, Louise stabs it with a fork. When Louise hears Ciara flanking her from another door, she moves further inside, allowing Patty and Ciara to enter the room. They move deeper to hunt them. A noise alerts Patty from inside a closet, but when he opens it, he finds Louise's phone. Louise suddenly surprises him and throws acid on his face, allowing the children and herself to escape. Ciara goes to hunt for them, but returns to look after Patty. Louise makes it with the children upstairs, but Mike is there. When he points his gun at them, Ben assaults him with a hammer, but Mike overpowers him and tries to kill him. In response, Louise kills Mike with an axe. They take Mike's car keys and prepare to leave. Meanwhile, Patty cools his face with a shower and tells Ciara to hunt the Daltons. They try to leave through the roof using Mike's ladder, but Ciara surprises them with a gun. Louise hits her head from behind, and Ciara falls to her death, taking the ladder with her. When Ben catches her, Agnes barely manages to survive falling, and they pull her up. For his family's sake, Ben jumps down from the roof and raises the ladder to allow the family to climb down. He tells Agnes to go to the car, and when Louise and Aunt come down, they hear Patty walking towards them. Ben prepares to fight him, but the noise is revealed to be a fox, and Patty emerges from behind them, holding Agnes at gunpoint. Ben throws his weapon, and the family pleads to him to let Agnes go. As Patty is about to shoot them, Agnes manages to inject Patty with a syringe of ketamine that was reserved for her, incapacitating him. As the family departs, Aunt approaches Patty and beats him to death with a brick as revenge. The family and Aunt leave the farmhouse, and on the drive, Agnes gives her stuffed bunny to Aunt, who sobs quietly, and the movie ends.